Every successful country had been a strong state. A strong state is one which has legitimate and effective institutions. In order for us in the Philippine Army to support our nation in building a strong state of credible and modern institutions, we in the Philippine Army are also creating offices that aim to enhance the legitimacy and effectiveness of our institutions. In this lesson, we will teach you the functions of offices in the Philippine Army which purposely aim to strengthen our institution.
Good day, ladies and gentlemen. I am First Lieutenant Jacinta D. Versosa, AGS Philippine Army. I am presently assigned with Office of the Ethical Standard and Public Accountability Philippine Army. I am here to lecture on the filing of Statement of Assets and Liabilities. What is a Statement of Assets and Liabilities? Statement of Assets and Liabilities is a sworn declaration of every public officer of his true and detailed worth in monetary value, covering all personal and real property owned by him, known as assets. His true and detailed statement of indebtedness of which he is obliged to pay, known as liabilities, as well as his sources of income and other sources of funds. What is a disclosure of business interest and financial connection? Disclosure of business interest and financial connection is a sworn declaration of public officers' business interest and financial connection, including those of his spouse and unmarried children below 18 years of age living with him in his household. What is the rationale why public officials and employees are required to file statement of assets and liabilities and disclosure of business interest and financial connections? The rationale is based on the constitutional premise that a public office is a public trust. Public officials and employees must at all times be accountable to the people, serve them with utmost responsibility, integrity, loyalty, efficiency, act with patriotism and justice, and lead modest lives. What are the bases for filing of SAL and disclosure of business interest and financial connection? The bases are Republic Act 3019 as amended and Republic Act 6713, particularly Section 8 thereof. What is the penalty for non-filing of SAL? Under Section 8 of RA 6713, imprisonment not exceeding 5 years or a fine not exceeding 5,000 pesos or both in the discretion of court of competent jurisdiction and disqualification to hold public office. When should statement of assets and liability be filed? Kailan? Within 30 days after assumption of office, to be reckoned as of his first day of service. On or before 30 April of every year thereafter, to be reckoned as of the end of the preceding year. Within 30 days after separation from the service, to be reckoned as of his last day of service. Where are statement of SAL and liabilities and disclosure of business and financial connection be filed? 1. For officers with the rank of colonel or captain in the Philippine Navy and above, to the office of the President. All officers, EP, and regular civilian employees, to the office of the Ombudsman for the military. All officers, EP, and regular civilian employees, to the OSPA, AFP. All officers, EP, and regular civilian employees, major services, OSPA office. all officers, EP, and regular civilian employees, major field unit. Permanent civilian employees to the Civil Service Commission. And then, the filer must keep a personal file. Where can forms of statement of assets and liabilities and disclosure of business, interest, and financial connection be obtained? Forms of SAL can be obtained from the Office of Ethical Standards and Public Accountability, Armed Forces of the Philippines, at Camp General Emilia Oganaldo, Quezon City. Forms may be reproduced by major services and their subordinate OSPA units on the need basis, provided that no alteration is made on any entry thereof. Who accomplishes SAL and disclosure of business interest and financial connection? SAL is accomplished by the filer himself. However, for more understanding, the filer may ask the assistance or guidance of the unit ESPA officer or officers and EP who are knowledgeable in the correct preparation of statement of assets and liabilities. What are the information to be contained in the statement of assets and liabilities? The information to be contained in the statement of assets and liabilities are the following: personal property of the filer and their mode and cost of acquisition, year acquired, total cost. All other assets such as cash or bank deposits, receivables, investments, furnitures, fixtures and appliances, jewelries and books, motor vehicles and the like. Real property to include mode of acquisition, year acquired, acquisition cost, repairs and improvements. All financial liabilities, both current and long-term. Family income and other source of funds derived from legitimate sources. Personal and family expenses and income taxes paid. What are the information to be contained in the disclosure of business and financial interest and connection? All information on existing interest with business enterprises or entities, whether as proprietor, investor, promoter, partner, shareholder, officer, managing director, legal consultant, or auditor, and the like. The names and addresses of the business enterprises must be clearly established, as well as all such other details as will show the nature of the interest or connections. What are the important aspects in the statement of assets and liabilities that a filer must understand? The meaning of assets. Assets are those any physical things meaning tangible, or a right, intangible, which is capable of being owned with money or value. It is divided into personal and real property. Examples of personal property are cash on hand and bank deposits, receivables, investments, business, stocks and bonds, furnitures, fixtures, appliances, jewelries and books, motor vehicles, which must be recorded based on their acquisition costs. Do not deduct depreciation cost against acquisition cost. Repairs or improvements made on this asset should be added to the acquisition cost in the column in order to arrive at a total cost. Examples of real property are lands, whether residential, commercial, industrial, agricultural, grazing, and fish ponds, and buildings such as houses, apartments, condominium, and others. Real property acquired by purchase in cash must be recorded based on acquisition cost, plus subsequent cost for repairs and improvements to arrive at a total cost. Note, do not appreciate the acquisition cost based on the fair market value or assessed value. The acquisition cost of real property purchased on installment basis consists of the principal amount of obligation based on the purchase agreement plus subsequent costs for repairs and improvement. Real property acquired through inheritance, donation, shall be valued based on the fair market value of such property at the time of inheritance or donation as per tax declaration, plus subsequent cost for repairs and improvements and the location of property be indicated clearly in the appropriate column of the SAL form. Insurance coverage of any form are not considered assets for purposes of filing statement of assets and liabilities. So, hindi kasama yung insurance coverage. On liabilities, financial obligations, both current and long-term, to be paid for whatever the filer had received, whether in cash, in kind, or services. Example of liabilities are short and long-term loans with banks, financial institutions, private individuals, housing and salary loans, accounts payable, and the like. So, ito na yung portion ng may liabilities. So, loans payable by installment shall be recorded based on the principal amount of obligation that matures year by year. The outstanding balance must be entered after deducting the principal portion of monthly installments for the whole year. Loans from relatives and close friends which are not in the nature of bona fide obligations but that of financial assistance without intention of repayment are not to be treated as liabilities. However, they are part of other sources of funds. So, yung mga utang na galing sa mga kamag-anak at kaibigan na wala ka namang intensyon na bayaran ay hindi mo pwedeng ilagay sa portion ng liability portion. Makukonsider yun as other source of funds. Net worth. Ano naman yung net worth? The term applied to the filer's remaining equity after the total liabilities are deducted from the total assets as interpreted from the following accounting equation. So, makikita nyo dyan yung paano magkwenta ng net worth. Minaminus yung total liabilities against sa total assets. What are family income and other sources of funds? So, lahat ng mga other sources of funds dapat i-indicate din doon. All earnings, whether subject to tax or not, which were received during the calendar year for which SAL is filed. Example of family income and other sources of funds are salary, allowances, bonus, dividends, sales, rentals of property, inheritance, personal and family expenses, amounts spent by the filer for his personal needs in the form of daily subsistence, sustenance, upkeep, and support of his family during the calendar year for which the SAL is filed. Example, payments for food, clothing, tuition fees, medical, dental, entertainment, electric, water bills, house rentals, and other household expenses. Premiums paid on life and non-life insurances. Interest, surcharges, and penalties paid which are included in the monthly amortization of loans and account payable are classified as family expenses. Note, do not include as personal and family expenses all amount spent for the acquisition, improvements, repair of assets, and payments of liabilities and principal loan obligation to creditors. Others SAL aspect. Husband and wife who are both public official or employee may file the required SAL jointly or separately. So kung parehong public officials ang mag-asawa, pwede silang mag-file ng joint o pwede ring hiwalay. Filers whose spouses are engaged in the private practice of profession, business, and or employed in the private sector must declare in their SAL information related to their financial transactions to include but not limited to earnings derived therefrom, business, assets, outstanding, etc. Kung ang asawa mo ay nagtatrabaho sa private or nagpa-practice siya ng profession niya, pwedeng i-declare din dun sa SAL information. Improvements, valuable addition for the betterment of real properties which enhances their value. Yun ang definition ng improvement. It's anything that add for the betterment of real property and enhances its value. Current fair market value means the actual value agreed upon between the buyer and the seller during a sale or transaction. What is the significance of the statement of assets and liabilities aspects? They must be strictly observed in the correct preparation of SAL. Otherwise, the entries may lead into a discrepancy in a cash flow analysis, which could result to a finding of unexplained wealth against the filer upon review by OSPA analyst. So, kailangan pala yung mga bagay na dapat isama sa SAL ay ilalagay dahil para maiwasanan malaking discrepancy sa pagka-cash flow. What is unexplained wealth? Unexplained wealth are those amount of assets or property acquired during the incumbency of a public officer which are manifestly out of proportion to his salary, other sources of funds, and other lawful income, and incomes derived from legitimately acquired property. How it can be determined if a public officer incurred unexplained wealth in a particular year. Financial analysis using the cash flow method of accounting is conducted on the entries contained in a SAL during a given period. Thereafter, detailed cash flow statement is prepared showing the total income and other sources of funds received and total expenditure incurred by the filer. If the total expenditure significantly exceeds the total income and other sources of funds, the difference constitutes the unexplained wealth. So, if the total expenditure significantly exceeds the total income and other sources of funds, the difference constitutes the unexplained wealth. What office in the AFP investigate cases of unexplained wealth? The Office of Ethical Standard and Public Accountability. What office in the AFP is tasked to check on statement of assets and liabilities and disclosure of business interests and financial connection? The OSPA AFP. Who are authorized to administer oath in statement of assets and liabilities and disclosure of business interests and financial connections? The persons authorized to administer oath are all active commissioned officers of the AFP and notaries public. What are some common errors in the filing of SAL resulting to discrepancy? The common errors are the following. 1. The value of real property are recorded at its fair market value or assessed value instead of acquisition cost. So, what must be recorded with pertains to real property is the acquisition cost, not the fair market value or assessed value. 2. Erroneous entries on the value of property, those acquired on installment basis. 3. Failure to indicate that the property acquired were inherited or donated, acquired as a gift, or winning from raffle draws. 4. All disbursement expenses for the acquisition of assets and payment of liabilities are included in the family and personal expenses. There is double entry of disbursement or expenses. 5. Failure to declare other legitimate income, income of spouse, and other source of funds. So there is a need to declare all other sources of income to avoid discrepancy. Failure to declare financial aids or assistance from relatives, from parents, sisters, brothers, or friends. 7. Proceeds from sales of assets were inadvertently omitted. So, if you have a sale of real or personal property, this should be indicated. The proceed must be indicated in the SAL. Failure to declare legitimate loans. So, all loans incurred must be indicated in the liability portion. 9. Treating financial aids, assistance from parents or relatives as liabilities. So, you do not treat financial aids or assistance as liabilities. It should be treated as other source of income. Income derived from compensation income. Pay and allowances was declared as net instead of gross income. So, pay and allowances should be declared as gross income, not net income. Income derived from business was recorded as gross instead of net income. Failure to declare improvements made on personal and real property. So, whenever you made an improvements on real or personal property, you must add it to the cost, the acquisition cost, to arrive at a total cost. Failure to declare other expenses, and some are clerical errors. So that ends my presentation for today. Thank you very much.